Hello, everyone. Storm 11 here. Today we'll be having an update on what is expected to be a significant severe weather outbreak, and it's going to start later tonight and go for basically all day tomorrow, coming in as multiple waves. We'll try to do a deep dive on each individual wave and the approximate timing of those waves. So let's first get started with the watch warning advisory display across the country. It's getting active in the central part of the U.S. and even eastern sections of the U.S. as well. We got a big severe weather outbreak in progress that stretches from Wisconsin down into Illinois, and that severe weather risk is going to continue into Indiana and even to Michigan. We've already had multiple reports of tornadoes, especially in the state of Wisconsin, and there may very well be a tornado in progress at the time I'm making this video right now. And we also got more severe weather east of here, east of Kentucky, more in towards the Mid-Atlantic region out there as well. So here's the SPC outlook for today, getting an enhanced risk for severe weather for portions of Wisconsin, northeastern Illinois, northern Indiana, northwestern Ohio, and southwestern Michigan, with a slight risk that does extend all the way down into parts of central and western Kentucky out there. Here's your tornado risk. Got a low-end tornado risk for tonight out there. It's got slightly better probabilities of western Kentucky, though I'm not sure about that. I think the tornado risk stays pretty low tonight. But damaging winds and even some large hail are possible, and there could even be the potential for very large hail, potentially, maybe in the sections of western Kentucky here. Tonight is still kind of iffy a little bit out there. Here's a closer view of that slight risk, and you can see here basically hasn't changed. It's been generally across western Kentucky and even extended to portions of central Kentucky, and the rest of the state is in the marginal risk out there. And then when we go to day 2, which is tomorrow, we do have a moderate risk for severe weather. That it does include the portions of the lower Ohio Valley and portions of the mid-south as well, or actually the portions of the mid-Mississippi River Valley. Here's a closer view here, state. That moderate risk basically includes areas generally along and west of the 127 corridor. It does get as far east as Frankfort, Harrodsburg, Danville, maybe even down towards Liberty, and it kind of points back off to the west out there, and it does include all of western Kentucky. This is a wind-driven moderate risk. Areas in the enhanced risk for eastern Kentucky or areas along and east of I-75 would be seeing anywhere from about 30 to 44% chance of seeing damaging winds. Areas in the moderate risk has a 45 to about 60% chance of seeing damaging winds, and these are some pretty high probabilities here. I mean, areas in the moderate risk, which has almost a 60% chance of seeing damaging winds in 25 miles of any given point. So that's actually a pretty high chance of seeing damaging winds. And then you have the hatched area, which blankets the entire state. That is potential for hurricane force winds out there, winds that could be greater than 75 miles an hour. So not only we're talking about damaging winds, but also potential for destructive winds. And there is the probability of some damaging wind gusts that can exceed 80 miles an hour. So the wind is could be pretty nasty out there. The tornado risk, still 10% hatched area out there, mainly across central and all of western Kentucky. The hatched area indicates the potential for strong tornadoes, which is EF2 or greater out there. Not really going to be a huge tornado setup by any means out there, but there is certainly an elevated risk for tornadoes out there, and some of those tornadoes can be strong. And then for the hail risk, across portions of central and western Kentucky, the potential is there for large hail, and even the potential for very large hail. And the SPC mentions the possibility for hail potentially up to 3.5 inches of diameter. I think the better opportunity of that would be in western Kentucky and maybe even out towards Missouri, southern Illinois, and northeastern Arkansas, where there's a little bit more instability to work with. But I think hail up to baseballs, maybe even pushing softballs, can very well be in play tomorrow. And honestly, I would probably expand this farther to the east as well. I think the potential for very large hail would also include all of central Kentucky as well. But that may be highly dependent on what type of storm mode you could see. Better chance for very large hail would be in supercells rather than clusters of thunderstorms out there. But do I agree with this? Do I agree with a moderate upgrade of where it's placed? Absolutely. Moderate, well justified here. And I think there's even an opportunity that can get expanded a little bit farther to the east here, but we'll probably find that out when 0Z data comes in later tonight out there. But going back to what's going on out there right now, the risk remains conditional for some strong to severe storms for the rest of the evening and into tonight. And we haven't seen any severe thunderstorm warnings, which is good, but we've had showers out there, especially in western Kentucky, been producing 40 to maybe upwards of 50 mile an hour winds out in western Kentucky here. And that seems to be the common theme here with some of these showers that is out there, is the potential for some strong wind gusts. We even had a couple of thunderstorms that tried to fire it up in portions of central Kentucky, but with that strong cap inversion in place, which we've talked about the last several days, talking about the cap inversion. Well, the cap is, for the most part, holding back those storms. As soon as they blow up, they basically die out. And that's just because of the cap inversion is so strong. If we didn't have a cap today, it would be a completely different story out there. We'll be tracking severe weather right now if we didn't even have a cap out there. And I can show you guys, if we look at the SBC mesoscale analysis here, and if I look at skew T's here, let's go to, let's say, E-Town here, and look at the skew T over there. You can kind of see that mid-level capping here in place here. It's actually a little bit weaker out here because, and that's where we've seen some of those showers and even a couple of thunderstorms try to initiate, but the air is still very warm in the upper levels as well, and that kind of puts a lid on things out there when you have pretty warm air out there. If we were to go into western Kentucky, where we got some of those showers, the cap is actually even stronger out there, a very strong cap out there, and most of those showers are pretty elevated out there. And some of that you see on radar is actually virga. There's quite a bit of dry air down towards the surface, and that's also one of the main reasons why we've seen quite a bit of strong wind gusts, is because we've had a lot of dry air between 700 millibars all the way down to the surface. So that's why them showers have been mixing down some stronger winds out there. And you can obviously see off to our northwest here, got plenty of severe weather action out there. Got tornado watches, severe thunderstorm warnings, and even tornado warnings up there. And those storms will miss us to the north. We're not worried about those. But later tonight, we'll have to watch southeastern Missouri back down towards Arkansas, where we're going to see some thunderstorms develop late tonight. And that can turn into one or possibly two little clusters of thunderstorms that will move very quickly to the northeast and maybe even due east at times out there. And that's what we're getting ready to talk about. And that's actually going to be the first wave out of potentially multiple waves of storms out there. And when we're talking about storm fuel out there, you can see here we got quite a bit of storm fuel out there. And this storm fuel will likely stick around for us through all night tonight. So potential is still there for some strong severe storms with that next wave of storms late tonight into Friday morning out there. So let's check out the HRRR here. This is the 18Z run. This is later tonight here, and this is the 500 millibar winds. And you can see here we have this jet streak, this 500 millibar jet streak that stretches from portions of western Kentucky down into northern Arkansas and southeastern Missouri. Winds anywhere from about 70 to upwards of 80 knots. So that would be strong enough to support thunderstorm organization at least in the upper levels of the atmosphere out there. So we got pretty good amount of wind shear to work with late tonight. And it's easier to see that shortwave at 700 millibars. You can see here the winds are actually pretty strong at 700 millibars. Those yellow colors you see there are winds north of 60 knots, even approaching 75 knots in some places. And that's some pretty strong winds for 700 millibars. And 700 millibars is below the 500 millibar wind. So this is a little bit closer to the surface compared to the 500 millibar winds out there. So, but this gets to show you here that there is going to be wind energy to work with these storms later tonight. And these winds here should help initiate thunderstorms out there. And when we're talking about instability, this is mixed layer cape at the same time. We still got plenty of cape out there, and this is the middle of the night, and you got mixed layer cape generally 2,000 plus, even approaching 3,000 in western Kentucky. That's quite a bit of mixed layer cape for the middle of the night, and this is more than enough storm fuel for severe weather. So storms that we see later tonight will likely become strong to severe when they first initiate and basically continue on throughout the morning tomorrow. Supercell composite parameters are also elevated. This kind of tells you that conditions can be favorable for supercells, especially numbers that are in the double digits, which we can see there's quite a few double-digit numbers out there in yellow, even some red colors in there as well, but that's some contamination there. But regardless, though, conditions will be favorable for severe weather for the first wave later tonight. And if we were to look into reflectivity, so we've seen all the ingredients here, what could it look like? Well, late tonight here, this is probably close to about 3 o'clock in the morning. We got thunderstorms that try to initiate in central Arkansas. There might be a couple of storms maybe closer to home as well. I would also watch probably southern Indiana, southern Illinois, southeastern Missouri, and western Kentucky for thunderstorm development as well. And I don't think that her model is picking up very well on that. I think we're going to see some storms up here too. Just based off of looking at the 700 millibar winds. I mean, with 700 millibar winds like that, that should definitely help create some thunderstorms out there. So if we continue on with reflectivity here, as we kind of go for the morning here, you see this cluster of thunderstorms start to get its act together in northeastern Arkansas. And these are going to be fast-moving clusters of thunderstorms here. They're going to be moving very quickly here off to the northeast here. And I think greatest potential for strong severe storms here will probably stay south of I-64. And you can see here as you get towards mid-morning for tomorrow, you got a pretty good cluster of thunderstorms out there that extends from southern Kentucky even down into middle Tennessee. You got a little bit of a bow echo out there, which can indicate the potential for some damaging winds if it becomes surface-based. If these storms are surface-based, then we could be dealing with damaging winds and even an isolated tornado risk. But I think for the most part they stay elevated probably up until late morning. And what that means that the thunderstorms here, there's going to be a layer of stable air here at the surface here. And it makes things more difficult for those winds to push through that stable air or layer of stable air out there. So if the storms do stay elevated here, the main hazard is going to be large hail. And there could be some instances of some pretty good sized hail out there as well. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a couple reports of hail up to ping pongs, maybe possibly closer to golf balls. It wouldn't surprise me from this wave here. And you can kind of see here it may slowly weaken a little bit into eastern Kentucky, but I think they're going to maintain intensity for the most part out there. But as soon as that wave gets out of the way here, as you get into the early afternoon, we should start to see some clearing out there. And if we go back to some of our severe weather ingredients here, this is when the next wave of storms start to show up here. So this is basically early afternoon on Friday or tomorrow, You got a pretty good jet streak going right over Kentucky here. There is going to be a pretty stout elevation mix layer coming through, which means that you got a lot of dry air particles in the atmosphere, which could help kind of clear up some of that cloud debris. And I think we will get some sunshine, especially here in portions of central and western Kentucky. Probably during the late morning into the early afternoon hours before storms initiate out there. And I'll be able to show you guys some forecast sounding here in a second here. But if we were to look at mixed layer Cape here, you can see here mixed layer Cape for that morning wave of storms still staying around 3,000 joules per kilogram. Let's actually get a forecast sounding here. I forgot to pick up a forecast sounding for the morning wave. So you can see here surface-based instability is 2,400. And honestly here, these storms will probably be surface-based if this were to be right. But you're talking about mixed layer Cape up around 3,000. That's quite a bit of mixed layer Cape. You got more instability in upper levels than you do towards the surface. So these storms here could be a little bit elevated. But overall here, this sounding would support the potential for damage winds and even some large hail out there. Now, tornado risk on this sounding in particular wouldn't really support the tornado. Lack of low level shear, SRH values are actually below 100 out there. But I think if there's a greater potential for an isolated tornado, it'd probably be on the tail end of the line, where wind shear in the lower vectors will be a little bit more supportive here, other than towards the northern end of the line out there. But you're going to see here, those storms will nuke the atmosphere. But you can already see here as you get towards, late morning into the early afternoon, you got atmospheric recovery in progress in western Kentucky here. And this is basically kind of your boundary right here. And this boundary here is expected to lift northward. Now, exactly how far north that boundary gets is something that is that's not really set in stone yet. Unfortunately, we may not find that out probably until late tonight or tomorrow morning. It'll be interesting to see how far south those storms go. But with rapid atmospheric recovery in progress at the same time here during Friday afternoon, we should start to see thunderstorms initiate in Missouri, and that's exactly what you see out there. And if I were to get a sounding real quick before these storms initiate here, let's go to central Kentucky here. You're going to be able to see the stout elevation mix layer here. And this is your elevation mix layer right in here, where the green line, which is your dew point line, goes away from the red line. That's dry air. The farther away they are, or the more spread out they are in between, the more dry air that you have. So, and with this type of a mixed layer, you will definitely get peaks of sunshine out there. It won't be full-blown sunshine or anything. There will likely still be some cloud cover, but you'll certainly see some peaks of sunshine here, which will certainly help recover the atmosphere here. And also another thing that's important to note, it's going to be pretty humid. Dew points are going to be in the low 70s and upper 60s. So it's going to be a very humid air mass out there with temperatures warming into the low 80s out there. If you look in western Kentucky here, by early afternoon, you can clearly see here there is a ton of instability, and that elevation mix layer is even stronger out here, especially in the upper levels out there. And you look at instability here, surface-based Cape is exceeding 4,000 joules per kilogram. And that's a lot of instability for our area, especially for spring. Mixed layer Cape is north of just about 3,000. So you got a solid amount of Cape out there. Now, wind shear values probably won't be that impressive, primarily in the lower levels earlier in the day, but as the day goes on, you'll start to see those wind shear values begin to increase out there. We also have some strong lap rates as well, so that can also help kind of clean up the atmosphere a little bit as well. And if we go back to our 5-hour millibar winds, you can see what happens here as this shortwave here departs into West Virginia and Virginia. We got this new shortwave starting to become more apparent out in Missouri here, and that short wave is going to get stronger. And this short wave tomorrow is going to be stronger than the one tonight. You got winds that go potentially nearing 90 knots. So this is a pretty good jet streak moving across southern Illinois, and it moves into southern Indiana, and I'll say it probably move into portions of western Kentucky as well. So this will be pretty supportive for some big time thunderstorms, and this will also help increase the amount of affluence out ahead of it, and or actually lift. If we go to the southern millibar winds, you can see here there's the first short wave moving out of here with the first wave of storms. Here comes the next one back here, and you can see here how that short wave really intensifies during peak time heating, which is really good timing if you want severe storms, which I'm sure most of you guys don't. But the short wave is expected to intensify as you get towards peak time heating tomorrow. And you can see here, those are winds getting even up as high as 75 knots. Now, some of these winds that you see here, like near Owensboro here, 76 knots, that's likely thunderstorm-related winds. And that's probably the rare inflow jet starting to kick into what's probably going to be a massive cluster of thunderstorms, and those will certainly be very nasty out there. And I think that's going to be one of the bigger concerns, is one or two of these thunderstorm clusters can contain widespread damage winds, especially the first one that comes through here. And if we look into mixed layer Cape, you can see here mixed layer Cape even tries to maximize 4,000 joules per kilogram southeastern Missouri, and that's pretty impressive for mixed layer Cape, especially out here in Kentucky here. And really all you will want is mixed layer Cape to exceed 2,000, and that's more than adequate for severe weather. And we're talking about mixed layer Cape anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000, and that is an exceptionally high number for our area here. And if we get another forecast setting, let's go out somewhere in western Kentucky. Let's go here, out ahead of those storms that are initiating. Yeah, you'll be able to see here plenty of instability here. Surface-based Cape is almost approaching 4,500. SRH still low, but it's starting to rise here. Another thing that's important is that your wind shear, or the winds from the surface all the way up in the atmosphere, become non-directional shear, or directional shear, excuse me. And what that means is that you get winds change direction with height. So winds of the surface on this particular sound, they kind of come from the south-southwest, but when you get up to like 700 millibars, which is here, they're due west. And with type of wind shear like that, it's easier to get severe weather that way. If you look at your hodograph, it does support not only supercell structures, but also massive hail. When that line goes straight out like that, that doesn't really curve or do crazy little turns or anything. When it goes straight out like that, that means them updrafts are going to be quite strong, and that can be very supportive for very large hail. What's also very supportive for very large hail is when you have strong wind shear in the upper levels, like you're talking about winds or wind shear anywhere from about 50 to upwards of 70 knots in the upper levels. And meanwhile, in the lower levels in the atmosphere, it's anywhere from about 15 to about 30. And with that type of wind shear environment, it's easy to get major hail. Another way that's going to be easy to get major hail is, of course, instability, but also the steep lap rates. We got very steep mid-level lap rates out there. So especially any thunderstorm that becomes discrete or becomes a supercell can certainly contain very large hail that could be up to baseballs, maybe even pushing softballs. So yeah, and of course a low-end tornado risk is there as well. But as you get deeper into Friday evening or tomorrow evening, that's when those low over shear vectors should start to ramp up a little bit more, and that's when the strong tornado risk should start to come into play here. I think the strong tornado risk doesn't really happen probably up until late Friday afternoon throughout the evening, especially if we have discrete supercells, which I think we will have a couple of discrete supercells out there. And you can see those thunderstorms really exploding out there, nuking that cape that is out there. If you were to look into supercell composite parameters here, you'd be able to see here numbers are pretty favorable for supercells out there. It's anywhere from about 7 to upwards of maybe 20. So if you get numbers like over a 10, the conditions are very favorable for supercells. And you can see here we got plenty of numbers that go north of 10 for the supercell composite parameter. Now let's get to the reflectivity. We've seen the ingredients, we've seen the forecast soundings. What could radar look like tomorrow? Now, remember, it's not going to look exactly what the model is going to say. I imagine it's going to be a little bit different tomorrow than what the models are showing right now. It wouldn't surprise me one bit, especially if they get the first wave wrong, which time will tell. But as we get into Friday afternoon, you can see those supercells initiating in Missouri. Those will likely contain very large hail, but some of those storms will likely come together and turn into what's known as a mesoscale convective system. And what that is, that's a big cluster of thunderstorms that can produce widespread damage of winds. You can even get tornadoes along that line. And you can see here, we do try to get some supercells to develop out ahead of that. The HER is a little bit messy out there, but it does suggest the potential for some supercells forming out there, mainly south of I-64 out there. And some of those supercells may eventually congeal into a big cluster of thunderstorms or an MCS. There could be more supercells that form behind as well. You can see it shows a supercell southeast of Elizabethtown, but at the same time, kind of back up towards the cold front here, we got a new line of thunderstorms that forms out there, and that's likely to be another nasty cluster of thunderstorms. And those there could certainly bring widespread damaging to destructive winds out there. So if we were to look into updraft velocity swaths here, this kind of gives you an idea of how intense these or how strong these updrafts can be, and higher the number, the stronger the storms are. You can clearly see here it's got the more intense storms south of I-64, which is interesting. This kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier in the video. The morning wave of storms can really determine what happens tomorrow. How far north does that boundary get? Which indicated by the HRRR, it seems like it gets us about as far north as just south of I-64. It doesn't even make it north of I-64. So it kind of makes things more uncertain for people that live like across northern Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Ohio. Some of these areas are in a moderate risk, but you got some models that don't show severe weather in those areas, and that kind of creates some uncertainty. And that's partially going to be due to the morning wave of storms. Now, if the morning wave of storms were to stick around a little bit longer, then that can lower the fuel potential, especially across central and eastern Kentucky. I don't think the morning wave of storms is going to have any impact whatsoever for areas west of I-65. If I'm going to be completely honest, morning wave storms will likely have an impact a certain way for eastern Kentucky than western Kentucky. So that's going to be my take on that. But I would still not rule out the possibility for areas north of I-64 getting some severe weather out of the setup here. It just really depends on what happens late tonight and into early tomorrow morning. There is one other thing out there, is you've seen where the HRRR likes to train some of the storms over some of the same areas. And this could be another risk that shows up tomorrow. It's the potential for localized flooding issues. And you can see here where those supercells or those severe storms train over some of the same areas. You can get some pretty good rainfall totals. It's got a general swath of 2 to 4 inches of rain out there. And if this comes true, then we can also see some flash flooding issues out there as well. So this may be another threat to watch as well. So overall, I forgot to bring up my severe weather table on here. I'll probably post it onto my X account later tonight here. But so let's kind of review this a little bit. So we're looking at the potential for 2 or 3 waves of strong severe storms out there. First wave comes through late tonight through Friday morning. we'll get a break through late morning. Maybe the only exception be Eastern Kentucky. But we'll get a break late morning into the early to maybe mid-afternoon hours, depending on where you live. I think we'll get some sunshine due to the stout elevated mix layer. The new supercells will initiate in western Kentucky, which should start to see a cluster of thunderstorms get its act together in Missouri or in southern Illinois by mid-afternoon, and then it's really game on late afternoon and into the evening hours. And some of us may get hit by possibly as much as 3 severe storms tomorrow. So it's not going to be a one-wave event. It's going to be multiple waves out there. I think the primary hazard for tomorrow is going to be damaging winds. I think no matter what happens with the morning wave of storms, I don't think it's going to impact the wind threat that much. Widespread, damaging to destructive winds is the primary threat. Some wind gusts within Boeing segments of storm clusters, especially the one that comes through late afternoon to the early evening, could contain winds north of 80 miles an hour, maybe pushing 90. That's a real possibility out there. Of course, hail that could be up to the size of baseballs, maybe even pushing softball-sized hail, primarily in those discrete supercells. And then for the tornado risk, I think the strong tornado risk is going to be more for those discrete supercells, especially later in the day when wind shear values start to pick up in the lower levels out there. I think the greatest tornado risk will probably be more confined where that warm front is and where those supercells form along that warm front, which in this case here, by the HRRR, it believes the greatest potential storm tornado risk may be just south of I-64 out there. And I'll have more updates on this severe weather event. If you follow me on X, I'll post plenty of updates on there. I'll try to post another video update tomorrow morning if time does allow. But make sure you stay weather aware. Tomorrow have multiple ways to get warnings out there, and just please take the warning seriously. Tomorrow is looking to be a pretty long day. But anyways, guys, this is all I got for you guys today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Guys, like this video, hit that like button. If you're like my channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notifications, never miss an upload. If you guys get any questions, put a comment section down below. I answer guys' questions. I see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.